Hundreds of brand new RVs are sitting untouched, and the ripple effect is already underway. A full year of stagnation has exposed something deeper than slow sales. Dealers are quietly admitting they cannot move specific models, even at historic discounts. Oversupply, rising floor plan costs, and shifting demand are reshaping the market behind the scenes. And that shift connects directly to your budget, your trade value, and your timing. So, which models are dragging the market down? Why are buyers walking past them without hesitation? And what does holding or buying the wrong rig mean for your wallet? Watch closely, because these next 30 seconds may save you thousands. Winnebago, Mini, Winnie. Some stories in this market begin quietly, almost unnoticed, and the Winnebago Mini Winnie is one of those stories. What looked like a dependable RV for road travel is now a model caught in a strange holding pattern. You can see it in auction lanes, in dealer backlots, and in long rows of models that have barely moved an inch in over a full year. The pattern is too clear to ignore, and it tells a bigger truth about supply, demand, and what happens when a familiar name gets oversupplied faster than the market can breathe. Look at the documented listings from regional wholesale lanes. Units built between 2018 and 2021 lingered through more than 400 consecutive days without meeting reserve. One example started with an asking line near 69,000 and eventually circled down toward the low 40,000 range, yet still did not secure a buyer. That kind of gap between original asking and final interest is not normal market softening. It signals an oversupply wave so broad that every new arrival pushes the older ones deeper into the stack. Why did it unfold this way? A major portion of the used Mini Winnie supply came from rental fleet rotations. Those fleets bought in volume, and when their cycles ended, they released batch after batch of similar units at the same time. Most of them rode on the same Ford E-Series chassis, carried similar mileage ranges, and showed identical interior wear patterns. When dozens land in the same quarter, the pricing baseline collapses. Dealers with brand new Mini Winnies priced near $119,000 suddenly face 20 or more used alternatives in the $40,000 to $50,000 window. That is not competition. That is a price anchor pulling everything down. For someone scanning the market today, the financial consequence is direct. A new Mini Winnie driven off the lot drops into the same resale pool as the fleet liquidations. Even if it has barely left the driveway, it becomes judged against units that lived harder lives and cost half as much. That comparison hurts long-term value, and it shows why so many brand new units remain parked for months. The bigger insight sits beneath the numbers. When a widely recognized name becomes oversupplied, brand familiarity stops helping. It becomes a reminder of how many similar units were already purchased, driven, and discarded. And until the excess clears, pricing on new models cannot stabilize. Something unexpected emerges when a familiar name loses its footing across shifting market currents today. Coachman Mirada. Market shifts do not announce themselves with fanfare, and the story of the Coachman Mirada proves how quietly an RV can slide from steady interest into long-term stagnation. This model once sat comfortably in the middle of the Class A gas segment, positioned as a practical option with respectable features and approachable pricing. Yet over the past selling cycle, something changed. Dealers ordered heavily during the demand spike of 2020 and 2021, expecting the surge to continue. When those forecasts collapsed, the Mirada was left exposed, sitting in rows that grew older and dustier with every passing month. Look at the numbers documented inside regional dealer inventory reports. Several Mirada units have remained on lots for more than 385 straight days. When a floor plan sits that long, the monthly interest that the dealership owes to the financing bank begins stacking like an unwanted tower. Those charges often hit several $1,000s before the first year even closes. That financial drag becomes part of the negotiation whether buyers see it or not. A dealer carrying a Mirada past the one-year mark is not trying to make profit. They are trying to stop the financial leak. The underlying question is simple. Why this model? And why now? The Mirada lives in a middle zone. It is not inexpensive enough to attract those seeking an affordable entry into Class A travel. It is not refined enough to sway those who want near-luxury comfort. In a market where buyers have become more selective, middle-ground models lose momentum the fastest. Add in the production rush during the pandemic years. when factories moved at higher speeds and consistency slipped and hesitation sets in quickly. Reports from owners mentioned alignment issues in cabinetry, uneven trim, and slide adjustments that required repeated shop visits. None of these faults alone ruin a model's reputation, but together they create friction that slows interest. Financially, the pressure spreads farther than the sales floor. Trade-in values sink when dealers already have too many of the same unit sitting in storage. When they mark down a brand new Mirada by tens of thousands, but still cannot move it, every older unit brought in for trade loses additional ground. This is not a matter of preference. It is basic depreciation math, reacting to supply saturation and buyer caution. The larger pattern becomes clearer when seen alongside similar models. Overordering sets the trap. Slow movement locks the trap. Floor plan interest tightens it. And by the time the market notices, the model has already fallen behind the newer alternatives, arriving each quarter. From here, the spotlight shifts toward another Class A gas coach shaped by a different kind of slowdown. One influenced not by its position in the market, but by a reputation that turned against it at the very moment supply reached its peak. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, make sure you hit like, add your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe so you never miss updates like this. These market shifts change fast, and staying informed keeps you ahead of the costly surprises. Thor Chateau. Reputation can turn on a dime, and this is a clear example of how an RV can shift from trusted staple to long-term lot filler almost overnight. Walk any major dealership row, and you see it instantly. Long lines of identical white coaches, many of them tagged, washed, photographed, and still unmoved for more than a full year. The pattern is too consistent to overlook, and it reveals a deeper issue sitting beneath the surface. The root of the slowdown traces back to rental fleet saturation. During the peak demand cycle, rental companies bought chateaus in bulk, often by the dozens, relying on their durability and straightforward layouts to handle constant turnover. When those fleets rotated inventory, they released clusters of nearly identical units into the used market. That sudden wave pushed pricing downward with no realistic way for new inventory to compete, especially when fleet models appeared at half the cost of showroom builds. Dealers felt the strain quickly. Reports from regional managers showed chateaux sitting for more than 390 consecutive days, creating steady monthly losses through floor plan interest fees. When a unit remains unsold that long, profit stops being the goal entirely. Survival becomes the priority. But the deeper issue is perception. Once shoppers associate a model with rental use, they expect tougher miles, heavier interior wear, and maintenance histories that might be inconsistent. Even brand new chateaus inherit that burden, because the name itself signals fleet turnover rather than personal ownership. Financial outcomes reflect that perception. When a rental-heavy name meets oversupply, resale collapses faster than trade-in schedules can adjust. A new chateau leaving the lot loses value instantly because buyers compare it directly to used units priced drastically lower, even if those used units lived harder lives. Add the operational reality on the dealer side. Every month a chateau sits, the interest fees grow. Those charges turn into pressure, and that pressure turns into aggressive markdowns. The deeper the cuts, the harder it becomes for owners trying to resell or trade, because their numbers must chase the dealer discounts downward. Seen together, the pattern is unavoidable. Oversupply created the drag. Perception amplified the hesitation. Floor plan math locked the model in place. That combination explains why so many Thor Chateau units remain lined up, photographed, repeatedly, washed frequently, yet still untouched as seasons change. The next model shifts the lens toward a Class A gas coach, with a reputation shaped not by rental history, but by quality concerns that emerged during the production surge, revealing another side of the market slowdown and the pressures working behind the scenes. It is a reminder that every model caught in a long sales freeze carries its own story, its own triggers, and its own financial consequences. And understanding those patterns helps reveal where the entire RV market is quietly heading next as well. Forest River, Georgetown. In every market cycle, there is a moment when a dependable name begins to slow. Rows of these Class A gas coaches now sit in extended holding patterns, waiting through season after season of limited foot traffic. The forest river Georgetown reflects that shift with unmistakable clarity. And this slowdown did not appear instantly. It built gradually as real-world ownership reports surfaced, as forums filled with repair discussions, and as dealerships quietly acknowledged that certain units had surpassed the one-year mark without a single serious offer. When a model reaches that point, the story becomes larger than one dealership or one region. It becomes a market signal. Documented reports from owner groups highlight a pattern that grew during the high-output production years. Several units built between 2020 and 2022 experienced issues tied to electrical harness routing, slide motor strain, and water intrusion around the front cap seams. One widely shared thread contained more than 140 individual responses describing service delays, repeat visits, and repair queues that stretched through multiple weeks. None of these concerns alone would stall an RV line. Yet, together, they created a hesitation that rippled through the shopper community. A hesitation strong enough to influence how long brand new inventory remained on the ground. Dealers felt the change in measurable ways. Internal stocking sheets documented Georgetown units passing 360 consecutive days unsold, accumulating month after month of floor plan interest. Every passing month added another layer of financial pressure, converting what had once been a profitable product segment into a category of forced markdowns. Those markdowns pulled pre-owned prices downward, which in turn shaped trade-in calculations. Owners who expected stable values discovered the market had shifted beneath them, leaving several with appraisals far below their expectations. That gap between perception and reality became part of the narrative surrounding the Georgetown, and it continues shaping current pricing today. The broader lesson sits beneath the timing. Mid-tier Class A gas models are feeling the squeeze from both directions. Those seeking lower operating costs are moving towards smaller RVs. Those wanting higher comfort standards are shifting toward diesel pushers. That leaves the Georgetown positioned in a shrinking center lane, where every repair report and every pricing fluctuation gains amplified weight. When a segment contracts, even modest concerns can grow into decisive purchase blockers. Dealers now watch units that once moved steadily remain parked through one season, then the next, collecting dust that is swept away but inevitably returns. The landscape shifts again as performance demands collide with rising costs, redefining expectations altogether now. Jayco Alante. Momentum can shift quickly in this market, and this RV shows how a single imbalance between power, weight, and operating costs can turn a once steady Class A gas coach into a long-term fixture on dealer asphalt. When you walk past rows of these units today, you see coaches that have been washed, repositioned, tagged, retagged, and still have not moved for season after season. That stillness is not an accident. It is the result of mechanical limitations colliding head-on with a changing economic landscape, one where fuel prices rose faster than expectations, and buyers adjusted their priorities just as fast. A closer look at documentation from several regional dealerships tells part of the story. Test drive logs recorded during 2021 and 2022 mentioned repeated strain on the Ford F-Series powertrain when the Alante approached full payload. Comments described long, slow climbs on moderate gradients, elevated engine temperatures on extended pulls, and frequent downshifts in situations where other models maintained steadier power. These were not isolated notes. They appeared across multiple reports, written months apart, showing a pattern that coaches in this weight class struggled under certain real-world conditions. That pattern passed quietly through dealership networks, but it did not stay quiet for long. Buyers began noticing the same issues once fuel costs spiked. When gasoline climbed past the numbers seen in previous cycles, the operational shortcomings of a heavier Class A gas coach stood out immediately. A coach that demands more fuel during climbs, more throttle during merges, and more attention on long-distance routes suddenly becomes a financial burden. Owners started calculating trip costs with new seriousness, and the Alante's consumption rates landed on the wrong side of those calculations. As those concerns spread, demand softened. Softened demand then met existing supply. And when a model already faced performance hesitation, even a small supply surplus could keep units parked well beyond their expected turnover window. The financial effects deepened from there. Dealers began marking down brand new Alante units by tens of thousands over the course of a single year. Those markdowns markdowns pulled used prices downward almost instantly. Trade-in values followed, leaving owners who purchased during the peak cycle facing offers significantly below their payoff numbers. This combination of lower demand, shrinking resale, and ongoing fuel considerations created a feedback loop that made the Alante harder to move with each passing month. Through all of this, the broader lesson becomes clear. When rising operating costs collide with a chassis that is already working near its limits, the market reacts decisively. That reaction sets the stage for models that cannot maintain performance expectations, especially in a shifting travel economy. Another turn develops when pricing pressure squeezes a segment already struggling under growing operational burdens. Winnebago adventurer. Certain market turns reveal themselves through quiet patterns, and this stands as one of the clearest examples of a Class A gas RV losing momentum in a changing landscape. Walk any dealership yard today, and you will find adventurer units that have been rotated, washed, repositioned, and still remain locked in the same spaces for month after month. That lack of movement is not a mystery. It is the direct result of a segment that shifted beneath this coach faster than expected. Heavy demand for premium features once pushed shoppers toward larger gas models, yet rising insurance costs, elevated fuel prices, and long-term storage fees reshaped the entire equation. When those numbers climbed, the center of the Class A market began to thin, and the adventurer was caught right in that thinning middle. Numbers pulled from regional listings reveal the magnitude of the slowdown. Units originally priced near $160,000 now appear on advertising sheets between $119,000 and $125,000 after nearly a full year without meaningful traffic. That discount window stretches wider every quarter, and dealers quietly acknowledge that they are not chasing profit anymore. They are chasing relief from floor plan interest expenses that stack each month. An unsold coach remains parked. The deeper reason for the freeze stems from buyer migration. Those wanting refined interiors and long-haul stability have shifted toward diesel pushers offering stronger torque and smoother ride characteristics. Those prioritizing manageable operating costs have moved towards smaller RVs, where fuel, maintenance, and storage fall into more predictable ranges. That leaves the adventurer occupying a narrowing space between two diverging paths. In a tightening market, that middle space becomes harder to defend. Real-world ownership reports add another layer. Several adventurer units built during the peak production period showed mismatched trim alignment, rattling cabinetry on rougher roads, and cooling strain during extended climbs. Individually, these issues are manageable. Collectively, they influence confidence at a moment when every buyer is weighing long-term operating costs more carefully. Dealers respond with markdowns that look appealing at first glance, but those markdowns also pull trade-in values downward. Owners looking to move out of their adventurer discover offers that sit well below what they expected, even when their units remain in strong condition. That gap between expectation and reality widens further as new inventory continues arriving. When a segment slows, depreciation does not pause. It accelerates. The broader takeaway emerges as these trends stack together. When fuel costs remain elevated, insurance premiums rise, and storage fees expand, the market shifts naturally toward rigs that demand less financial overhead. That pressure shapes its future. Thor hurricane. There are moments when a shifting market exposes the pressure points nobody wanted to acknowledge. Look across dealership lots in multiple regions, and you find the same repeating picture. Long rows of untouched Class A gas coaches, washed and repositioned over and over, yet still anchored in place through season after season. The stillness is striking because it shows what happens when supply, operating costs, and long-term ownership math collide at the same time inside a single RV line. Evidence gathered from dealer pricing sheets paints the scale of the slowdown with uncomfortable precision. Units originally listed near $155,000 now appear marked down to the mid-$90,000 range, after more than 470 consecutive days without a buyer committing. When a coach sits that long, every day adds to the mounting floor plan interest bill the dealership must pay to the financing bank. Those charges accumulate like hidden layers of weight, pressing down on both the dealer and anyone attempting to trade for a newer model. By the time the first year closes, the goal is no longer profit, it becomes escape. The bigger shift came from economic forces that reshaped the travel landscape. Insurance premiums rose sharply during the recent cycle, storage fees increased across urban and suburban areas, and fuel costs remained well above historical norms. A large gas Class A coach, like the Hurricane, sits directly in the path of those rising operating expenses. Owners began recalculating long-distance trips, weighing maintenance costs more carefully, and reconsidering the feasibility of larger rigs that demand higher recurring expenses. Those calculations rarely favored the Hurricane, especially when similar layouts appeared in smaller, more efficient formats. Performance comparisons added another layer of hesitation. Reports from road tests described significant downshifts on moderate inclines and elevated engine temperatures during extended climbs. None of these issues alone disqualify a coach, but paired with rising fuel and insurance expenses, they become decisive factors. Shoppers began looking toward diesel pushers for torque advantages or downsizing to lighter RVs for cost stability. The Hurricane sat in a shrinking middle ground where fewer buyers remained. As dealers cut deeper to clear aging inventory, trade-in values dropped in parallel. Owners returning to negotiate discovered offers far below their payoff numbers, often influenced by the dealership's own backlog of unsold Hurricanes. Depreciation accelerated, and resale confidence weakened as markdowns grew more aggressive. Many shoppers watching these shifts noticed additional pressure forming behind the scenes, especially as floor plan costs mounted and supply continued stacking. Each passing week pushed pricing further downward, turning hesitation into certainty and certainty into confirmed loss. By the time new incentives appeared, the underlying financial damage had already shaped expectations across the entire marketplace. All of these elements connect to a larger truth shaping the market's direction. When operating costs rise and mid-tier demand thins, larger gas coaches feel the pressure first. Understanding which RVs are stalling on lots is more than market trivia. It's a roadmap for protecting your money before the next pricing shift lands. These patterns are already telling a larger story, and the signs are only getting clearer. Stay alert, watch the numbers, and move on your terms, not the dealers. So the real question is this: are you actively tracking which segments are softening and which are about to pivot? Or are you relying on dealers to tell you after the market has already moved? If this breakdown helped you see the shifts ahead a little more clearly, hit like so more buyers get the data they need instead of sales spin. And make sure you subscribe, because the next round of inventory swings and pricing adjustments is already forming. And staying informed now puts you in control later.